Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're building a top-down mental map of the human skeleton. If you're prepping for medical exams, well, this is your high-yield, rapid-fire review. We're getting right to the absolute core of what you need to know. We're going to build a really solid foundation so you can conquer literally any anatomy question thrown your way.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our agenda for today's rapid elevator ride down the body. First, cranial and facial bones. Then, the spine and thorax. Third, upper limbs anatomy. Fourth, pelvis and lower limbs. And finally, ankles, feet, and some crucial exam tips. Section 1. Cranial and facial bones.
We're starting right at the top with the skull. Now, when you're learning skull anatomy, it's absolutely vital to mentally divide the bones into two distinct groups just to keep things structured. So let's map out the cranial bones first. These act like a protective vault surrounding the brain. You've got the frontal bone right at the front, the parietal bone on top, the occipital at the back, and the temporal bone sitting just beside the ear. Then there's the sphenoid, which is anterior to the temporal bone, and completing the set is the ethmoid bone. Now, the ethmoid is often the one that trips students up, mostly because it's a bit harder to visualize. Just remember its orientation, okay? It sits closer to the midline, posterior to the nose, and inferior to the frontal bone. Moving from the cranium to the physical structure of the face, we have the nasal bone, forming the bridge of your nose. Then the maxilla, which is a major anchor connecting the nose, your upper teeth, and the cheek. And you know those prominent cheekbones you see in the mirror? Well, those are your zygomatic bones. Finally, we have the mandible, your jawbone. Pay close attention to this connection right here because it is highly testable. The mandible connects directly to the temporal bone at the temporal mandibular joint, which is commonly known as the TMJ. Section 2. The spine and thorax. Let's take our anatomical elevator down to the core structure of the body. We're setting up for some crucial numbers here, so make sure you lock these upcoming digits firmly into your memory. From superior to inferior, you absolutely must remember the numbers 7, 12, and 5. A classic mnemonic is thinking of eating your meals at 7 a.m., 12 noon, and 5 p.m. So you have 7 cervical vertebrae in the neck, 12 thoracic vertebrae in the thorax, and 5 lumbar vertebrae in the lower back, followed by the fused sacrum and the coccyx. And hey, it's totally crucial for exam prep to understand the distinct differences here. The cervical vertebrae are really specialized for head movement. Then the 12 thoracic vertebrae uniquely articulate with your 12 pairs of ribs. And finally, those large, thick 5 lumbar vertebrae, they are specifically designed to bear the massive brunt of your upper body weight. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the top 2 cervical vertebrae don't just go by their alphanumeric designations. C1 and C2 actually have highly tested special anatomical names. C1, which connects directly to the base of the skull, is the atlas. You can kind of think of the mythological figure holding up the globe of your head. C2, sitting right below it, is the axis, and that's what allows your head to rotate side to side. So if you see an exam question about the uppermost cervical vertebrae, you should definitely expect these specific names to be used. Let's expand out to the thorax. At the center front is the sternum, which is broken down into 4 parts. The manubrium at the very top, the sternal angle where it articulates with the body, the main body itself, and that tiny cartilaginous tip at the bottom called the xiphoid process. Protecting your vital organs are your 12 pairs of ribs, which again correspond perfectly to the 12 thoracic vertebrae. But notice that final detail on there. Ribs 11 and 12 are known as floating ribs. Why? Well, because unlike the others, they completely lack a forward connection to the costal cartilage or the sternum. They literally just float freely at their anterior ends. Section 3. The upper limbs anatomy. Let's shift our focus laterally, away from the core. We're going to trace the skeletal anatomy outward, starting from the shoulder joint and extending all the way down to the tips of your fingers. Let's rapidly map out the proximal upper limb joints. And honestly, look at how beautifully logical anatomical naming can be. The sternoclavicular joint simply connects the sternum and the clavicle, or collarbone. The glenohumeral joint, which is your main shoulder joint, connects the glenoid fossa of the scapula, your shoulder blade, with the humerus, the large bone of your upper arm. Moving distally, the elbow joint is exactly where the humerus meets the 2 bones of your forearm, the radius and the ulna. Traveling further down the arm to the wrist, I want you to sear this number into your mind. 8. There are exactly 8 carpal bones in your wrist. These 8 tiny bones form a critical mechanical bridge connecting the radius and ulna of your forearm to the metacarpal bones in the palm of your hand. From those metacarpals in your palm, we finally reach the phalanges, your fingers. Let's step through the joints from the base out to the tip. First, you hit the metacarpophalangeal, or MCP joint. These are basically your main knuckles. Next up is the proximal interphalangeal, or PIP joint. And finally, nearest the fingertip is the distal interphalangeal, or DIP joint. Oh, and just a quick bonus fact. Right at the base of the thumb, where it meets those 8 carpal bones, is a really unique saddle joint called the carpometacarpal, or CMC joint.
Section 4. Pelvis and lower limbs.
Let's take our anatomical elevator much further down to the foundation of the body. We're looking at the heavy-duty load-bearing structures now, starting with the pelvis. You know, a lot of people think of the pelvis as just one giant bone, but it's actually made of 3 main bones on each side. We've got the ilium at the top, the ischium at the bottom back, and the pubis at the bottom front. But the absolute most crucial anatomical landmark for your exams is the acetabulum. This is the deep socket of the hip joint. What's fascinating here is that it's precisely the point where the ilium, ischium, and pubis all converge and fuse together. It creates the perfect, sturdy anchor for the head of the femur, your massive thigh bone.
Moving past the femur and the patella, your kneecap, we arrive at the lower leg. Now, I want to pause our rapid-fire review for a quick active recall check. Between your 2 lower leg bones, which one is medial, meaning which one sits closer to the midline of your body? Take a quick mental guess right now. It's the tibia! Outstanding if you got that right. The tibia is the much larger weight-bearing bone on the medial side. The fibula sits laterally on the outer aspects of the leg, and it acts more as a site for muscle attachment. Seriously, keeping lateral and medial straight between these 2 is one of the easiest ways to secure points on a practical exam.
Section 5. Ankles, feet, and exam tips.
We've arrived at our final anatomical destination. We're going to quickly map out the base of the skeleton. And then I want to share the ultimate memory consolidation strategy to make sure everything we've just covered actually sticks in your brain. So remember the number 8 for the wrist? Well, for the ankle and foot, the magic number is 7. You have 7 tarsal bones. Do not let exam writers trick you by swapping the carpal and tarsal counts. It is 8 in the wrist and 7 in the ankle.
Here's the full breakdown of those 7 tarsal bones. We have the calcaneus, the cuboid, the navicular, and the 3 cuneiform bones. But the superstar here, the one you absolutely need to highlight in your notes, is the talus. The talus is the specific bone that joins directly with the tibia and the fibula to form the true ankle joint. Distal to the tarsals are your metatarsals and then the phalanges, just like we saw up in the hand. And this brings us to a brilliantly simple, highly testable parallel between the upper and lower limbs. For all your other fingers and toes, you have 3 phalanges, a proximal, a middle, and a distal. But there's a really notable exception, your thumb and your big toe. Both of them totally lack a middle phalanx. They only contain a proximal and a distal phalanx. It's just a wonderful little bit of anatomical symmetry. So, the crucial point is this. Passively reading your anatomy notes just isn't going to cut it for medical exams. You must test yourself with flashcards shortly after learning this material. Active recall forces your brain to actually retrieve the information, which is an extremely powerful way to consolidate this skeletal map into your long-term memory. Just keep running through those flashcards until every single bone and joint we just covered is effortlessly recalled.
Which brings us to my parting question for you. Have you tested your rapid recall today? You've just built a fantastic high-yield mental map of the human skeleton. Don't let it fade away. Get out there, grab some flashcards, and solidify this knowledge right now. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.